Well, hey everyone, Wayne Fox here, back with another dock review. This is a little different because this dock I've received in the middle of December in 2025, and it hasn't been announced or released yet, so I'm not sure when the video will be released. Once the product's announced, I'll be able to release the video. But I was pretty excited when this showed up. Ivanky asked me to test the device, and in this case, I'm always excited to review docks from some of the better companies, and Ivanky is one of those. When this showed up, I was pretty excited because what they've done now is they've released the fusionDock, the fusionDock Ultra. Now, looking at the ports available on this, there's probably more ports available than any other single dock you can buy. Now, one reason they can do that is it really is two docks, two Thunderbolt 5 docks fused into one, same double cable, I'm pretty sure, very convenient, and I don't know what the final price point will be. They'll announce that soon. It'll be a little pricey, but it still will be cheaper than buying two Thunderbolt 5 docks because you need the connectivity. I've really been excited to open this since it showed up yesterday, so let's get this thing open and check it out. Okay, so I've got to admit that is the most impressive box openings, I think, of any computer product I've ever had. Apple's are pretty impressive, but this is almost like opening a watch box. Maybe overkill, but I think they felt this was such a good product it deserves something special. Let's take a look at what's in this box now. So obviously the dock itself is the first thing that we see. Let's go ahead and pull it out. Okay, first thing I want to mention is this is a really attractive device. The color is a little different. It's not as dark, a little more neutral than the previous dock. Everything's boxed up nicely in black. Looks like this is basically an instruction manual, which is unusual nowadays. Seems like most time we just get QR codes anymore. A couple of small boxes, which I assume have the cables. And we have the power cord to the power supply. And again, we have the nice, really cool Ivanky double cable. This will plug into your laptop in one move, but you can also separate it. So if you're using this on something other than a MacBook Pro, as long as you have two Thunderbolt 5 ports, and probably even Thunderbolt 4, you can arrange to plug them in. Really cool cable. Move the box out of the way now, take a quick look at that. And fairly beefy power supply. And we also have a Thunderbolt 5 braided cable. And notice this is actually Thunderbolt 5. They did put the logo on that. So this is a 240 watt power supply. Maybe a little underpowered for a double dock. Hard to say, but I assume that the 140 watt, obviously you can't plug in two computers, one each side, and charge them both. So let's take a look at the ports real quick. On the front, we have a total of 9 USB ports. As I mentioned, each of these layers is an independent dock. You can hook up just one and not the other if you want. You can actually also hook one into the other, so you only have one cable to the computer. Obviously, that's a lot of ports to share a lot of bandwidth. 2 are USB-C, 2 are USB-A, 7 are USB-C. The power delivery port, oddly marked, is actually a USB 3.2 port. I'm not sure why they didn't go and extend the line over there. And also it doesn't tell you the wattage, and that's pretty standard. I think that's actually the USB standard. This should be labeled with both the protocol, which is USB 10 gigabit per second, and also be labeled with the wattage. 45 watts, it's a lot of wattage for power. The others all supply 7.5, which is also pretty nice. A lot of small devices, that's all they need. Audio in, audio out, no problem. TF SD card slots, and you can use both at the same time. You can plug in one into each slot and use them simultaneous. No power button on this one, which surprised me after putting on the last one. I'm still kind of mixed on whether you need one or not. Look at the back real quick. And here we have audio in, audio out. And if you use the front port, it takes priority over the back port with the audio. 2 connections to your computer. As I mentioned, each of these controls one layer of the dock, so each of these is really an independent dock in one housing. We have 4 Thunderbolt 5 ports, again oddly marked with just a monitor symbol. They did this on all their docks, not sure why. Again, they've also used an HDMI and a display port, one to each dock. I really wish they would just give us the 3 USB-C connections. We all know what those will connect to. We have the optical audio out, which might be really helpful for some people. Big thing is the 10 gig Ethernet. A lot of people really need that. And if you need the 10 gig Ethernet, then you're better off spending the extra money to buy this or the TS5 Plus, because you'll spend $150 for a really good Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter, and you might as well just spend the extra money. 3 more USB 3.2 ports, 10 gigabit per second on the back, 1C, 2 Type A. So overall, a lot of connectivity. I count 12 USB ports on this thing. There's actually 9 on the front, 3 on the back, and all 3.2, all 7.5 watts of power delivery, really handy. The most connectivity of any dock that I've had. Like I said, a few criticisms, but that's pretty much typical of all dock makers right now, and no real problem, easy to get around. So now it's time to just give this thing a test and work it over and just see how it works. Like I said, this is a pre-production model that I've got here, and I don't know if I'll run into any snags or not, but I'll be back whenever they release the device and finish up the video with what my findings. And unlike a lot of my docks, I've been using it for a while. Well, I'm back, middle of February. Had the dock for 2 months, and I've used it exclusively that entire time. Ivanky recently announced its formal release, and that'll happen on February 20th. That's when it'll start shipping. You can actually pre-order it now, but now the NDA is off, I can go ahead and finish up this video. I found it to be very, very functional. I've tested in a lot of scenarios with M4 Max MacBook Pro, as well as a M3 Ultra Mac Studio. I don't have 4 displays. I only have 2 4K displays to test it with, but I run both of those displays out of a single side of the dock. I use the top layer with HDMI and DisplayPort for my 2 displays, and then I use the bottom layer for things like my capture cards, USB or SSD storage, things like that. That's one nice thing about the dock. Even though it's the same size as a regular dock, it's got double the impact, or double the throughput, because it's really 2 Thunderbolt 5 docks built into one, and you can use them independently. I actually ran the lower dock out of the Thunderbolt port downstream of the upper dock, and as far as delivering USB speeds and other functionality, it worked just fine. So you could use it as a single dock and get a lot of connectivity, but you wouldn't want to connect a lot of really high bandwidth devices such as capture cards, 4K displays, things like that. At some point, you'll start to run into some bottlenecks. So real quick, let me just show a few test results just to show the dock does deliver just pretty much like any other dock. First of all, one of the main features of this dock is the 10 gigabit Ethernet, and that's important to a lot of people. And there are only 2 choices when it comes to docks, either this or the CalDigit TS5 Plus. And as I mentioned earlier, if you need that connectivity, you could buy a lower price dock, but you're going to spend $150 to get a really good, dependable 10 gig card, and you'll tie up a Thunderbolt port. So buying this dock or the CalDigit is a pretty good option, because that's equivalent paying $350 for a dock, which is about what a normal dock goes, and they don't have near the connectivity. Anyway, as you can see here, we're getting pretty well expected results. This is connected to my 10 gig NAS server in the basement, and I'm getting about 800 to 900, which is pretty close to the max you're ever going to get with 10 gig or any 10 gigabit per second device. So it performs as expected, does quite well. So here I've got the Samsung 990 Pro. It's in the TerraMaster SSD that I recently reviewed, and we're able to get 6,000 megabytes a second write speed, which is something that only the Samsung seems to be able to deliver through a dock. This is similar to what you get connected directly to the Mac, so we're not losing anything. Western Digital and other brands, we're getting great speed, but only the Samsung gives us this speed. But as you can see, we're getting the exact same thing we're getting through any other dock. There's no problem with this dock delivering what you would expect out of it. Now here we've connected 2 4K displays to the same, it's all connected to the same layer of the dock. And as normal, we lose some bandwidth to the SSD and the write speed, but we're still getting 5,000 instead of the typical 4,000. And that again is due to the 990 Pro. If you do a lot of file transfers that are not huge ones, the 990 Pro has an advantage because of this write speed. If you're doing a lot of really big file transfers, then probably the Western Digital has an advantage because it's got SSC. The SLC cache is twice as large, much more dynamic. So it depends on what your use case is, which of those SSDs might be the best choice. Anyway, video's not about that. Let's get on with the dock. So because this is 2 docks, each layer is capable of supporting 2 displays, giving you a total of 4 external displays you can support. Now, how many and resolutions are all dependent on which actual Mac you're connecting it to. One thing they make very clear, this works only on M series Macs. It doesn't work on any Intel-based machines. If you have the M3 Ultra like I have right now, or an M4 Max MacBook Pro, or even an M2 Max or M3 Max MacBook Pro, you can connect up to 4 6K displays. Here's the actual chart they give you. I'll kind of scan through this. There's 4 sections to it. As you can see, a lot of Macs are supported. This will support the most displays of any dock out there because it can handle 1 or 2 from each layer or each, quote, dock within a dock. So let's talk just for a minute about a couple things that might be of a concern to some. First of all, the device does use fans. It's actively cooled. There's actually 2 fans in it, and they've designed it pretty interestingly. In fact, go to their website and you can look at the review and see how they've kind of taken care of the cooling. Now, these docks get hot. There's a lot of heat generated by all the components inside, especially when you start pushing that many connections. And the choice of fans seems like maybe a negative, but my model is the pre-production model, and one of the changes they made was to even put even quieter fans in. And I can't hear these fans. I mean, it's definitely not louder than my MacBook Pro or my Mac Studio. Unless you've got a quiet room where there's just zero noise, I don't think you'll ever hear the fans over anything else. They never get fast. I have to get within about 8 to 10 inches to hear these fans. Admittedly, my ears are a little old, but I'm not deaf. And the new fans they put in, they chose specifically because they could get them quieter. So for some people, it might be a concern. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think the fans are a problem. The other thing I will mention is a couple of criticisms I have, and this kind of goes about this specific dock, but this is more to dock makers in general as well. I'm puzzled why they continue to put dedicated ports on the back for displays. The USB-C connection that has Thunderbolt or USB 4 version 2 is fully capable of driving any display technology they need. In fact, the USB connections are more capable than the HDMI connection they have on the back of this device, which is only HDMI 2.0. And you can't drive the displays with the same resolution capabilities. So why not just go ahead and give us 6 USB-C connections that are connected to USB 80 gigabit per second, 4.2, or Thunderbolt 5, whichever you prefer to call it, and let us choose how to use those ports, because we might not want to connect a device. Second, if you use those smaller Thunderbolt ports, that frees up some real estate, so you can put some of those USB connections that are on the front, on the back where they belong. A dock is not something that you plug a lot of things into and out of all the time. Generally speaking, a dock is because you have a lot of connected devices and you just want them all plugged in, and you don't want to have to take one out and plug another one in. And so most of the time you don't need access to those ports. And at least 6 of those USB ports should be on the back of the device. In fact, in my case, I would prefer about 8 of them on the back and only need about 4 on the front. And while you're doing it, one of those Thunderbolt ports or USB 4 version 2 ports, put one of those on the front. Every dock from now on should put one of those on the front. A USB 4 version 2 / Thunderbolt 5 port is fully capable of talking to any protocol out there, including USB 3.2 devices. So if you don't need the Thunderbolt device on the front, you can still connect your USB devices to it. But there are so many people now that have things like these little SSDs and really want to be able to change them out or plug them in, and accessibility to one of those is nice. I actually have a cable going from the back to the front to get to enough USB ports, but I also have to have a cable coming from the back around to the front, so I've got somewhere to plug in my external SSDs. So I wish these dock makers would kind of consider that. It might be a long time before we see any revisions to this, because I don't know if Thunderbolt 6 is even on the horizon yet, and I don't think anybody will re-engineer these devices now that they've got them out there. But I really think that they should think that through, and maybe before they get the engineers to turn loose, they should get a lot of end users and talk about where they want ports and what kind of ports they want. Maybe I'm weird out there, but I just don't see need for a display 2.1 port when a USB-C connection that's capable of display port 2.1 is more than adequate. Anyway, so I've updated my spreadsheet. I've left a few of the lower price docks on there, which give all real similar capabilities. And price-wise, there are a few other choices. These are several that I've tested along with some other ones. I've noticed that the Anchor dock and I think the Cable Matters dock have both lowered their price recently, so they're great choices, as well as the Sonnet. And that's a nice choice. I put it on there because it's unique in the fact that it's got that 1 terabyte SSD. However, if you need connectivity, there are really only two to consider, the CalDigit TS5 Plus and the fusionDock Ultra. And of course, the Ultra gives you the most connectivity with its 12 USB-C 3.2 ports, the 10 gig Ethernet, separate audio in and optical audio out on the back, things that other docks don't have. And to top it off, it's really a beautifully made device, very attractive. So I really like this device. Even if I were to buy 2 Cable Matters docks, for example, at $329, I would still only have 6 USB ports, of which only 2 or 4 would be USB 3.2. And so despite the fact that I'm spending $60 more, I have less connectivity. So by merging 2 docks into one for those that need a lot of connectivity, then it's a great choice. Now, if you don't need the connectivity, then certainly don't spend the money. One of these others might be more than you need. And as I've mentioned many times before, you might not even need that. You might simply need a really good hub like the CalDigit Thunderbolt 5 hub, which gives you 5 USB ports and 3 Thunderbolt ports. That might be all that you really need for your connectivity, because you've got everything else, such as Ethernet and everything else, covered. Anyway, for those that really need this much connectivity, this is a good choice. I've had great luck with it over the last 2 months. It seems to stay relatively cool and comfortable. It doesn't seem to overheat. As I mentioned, I can't hear the fans at all myself, but I am pretty old and my ears aren't as good as they used to be. But even in a really quiet environment, if you've got a Mac or something else sitting there running, you're going to have fan noise that's probably louder than this dock, especially with the new fans that they decided to put into it. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any thoughts, be happy to read your comments below. So until next time, thanks for watching. See ya.